Hello everyone, and welcome to this engineer interview, which is our second of the 2022 Rail Week. My name's Scott, and I work at Primary Engineer. Now, before we start, I just wanted to say thank you for signing up to this year's competition. It's our 10th birthday this year, so thank you all so much for celebrating it with us. We can't wait to see all of your amazing and creative ideas, and you're going to get some inspiration today from our special guest speaker, so you can answer the question, if you were an engineer, what would you do? Now, our special guest speaker is going to start with a 10-minute presentation, all about what it's like to work in the rail industry with Network Rail, and then we're going to open up to questions from the audience. But now, without any further ado, I'd like to hand over to our wonderful special guest, Mona Sihota.
Thanks, Scott. I'm really glad to be here. Hopefully that shows well on your screen and we're ready to go. So, as Scott said, my name's Mona Sihota. I am the Network Technical Head for Drainage and Lineside. Don't worry, that title means nothing. It's weird. I'll explain in a bit. And I work for Network Rail. The area of the business that I work for within Network Rail is Drainage and Lineside, as it says. Drainage is where we collect and convey water around us from the land as it comes towards the railway, and we use that various different components, and we collect the water and naturally move it away. So it lands on the railway and it moves away gently. The line side is where we have all of our vegetation and trees, and it's also where we have our boundaries, our fences, walkways, pathways, to allow, one, for security, and secondly, to allow people to come onto the railway. So I'm going to go through the next slide. There we go. I'll give you a little bit more about Network Rail, put things into context. Network Rail is the 4th largest landowner in the UK. And that means that we've got a lot of land and a lot of challenges, let's say, when it comes to that space. We have 22,000 kilometers of railway.
Wow.
And so that's track going up and down and sideways throughout the UK, Scotland, and Northern Ireland. So a lot of railway there. We have over 100 million trees that are living and located on the railway, on the sides of the railway, the line side. And in that space, we've got lots of biodiversity. So when I'm talking about biodiversity, I'm talking about bees, butterfly, bugs. Because where you've got bees, butterflies, and bugs, then you'll have birds and bats and badgers eating those bees, butterflies, and bugs. And it's the lovely life cycle that lives there. So lots of activity and life living in that green space. We have 44,000 kilometers of boundary. So if we've got 22,000 kilometers of rail, you got fences on both sides. So you double it up. And those boundaries are there to protect people and animals like cattle and sheep from coming onto the railway, because it's quite dangerous on the live railway. But it also creates a safe workplace environment for our people to work within, because we create walkways and steps and pathways for our frontline staff to work. And so that's part of the connected to the boundaries. And as I mentioned in the first slide, we've got assets. We've got over 1 million drainage assets, things like pipes and pits and ditches and channels that collect the water and convey it when it comes onto the railway until it exits the railway, and then it carries on. And that all supports the water cycle that comes onto the railway and all the water that's there. So that's the space I work in. And to help explain what drainage and lineside is in the context of the railway, I thought I'd show you a little video that I pulled together to help explain what is drainage and lineside. So let me play this, and I'll repeat it a few times, and I'll talk over it as well. So there she goes. There we are. So there's our lovely staff, not real, working on the drainage assets, and they're pumping water out the track. They're clearing ditches. They're making sure that the water path is clear and things are built and working. We also have people working on vegetation, so the trees that are growing too close to the railway, Let me play that again, just so you can see it a few times. So that any vegetation that's growing onto the railway is kept clear. We have a clear corridor so that the trains can run without any sort of sighting issues. So we want to keep the signals clear. We want to keep the signs clear. We want to keep level crossings clear. And vegetation, it grows. So we got to keep all that away. At the same time, we're trying to manage biodiversity and making sure that we're environmentally friendly as well. So we don't just hack it all up. We want to make sure that it's supportive of the railway. At the same time, it's being kind to the environment. And then the third thing that I look after is called boundaries. So there's some fences, and we've got different kind of fences, to big metal fences, to chains and wire and post, to access where we've got steps and gates coming onto the railway. And you'll see that in the little corner here. We've got steps and a gate, and we've got CCT camera. There's a CCT camera, and I've got solar panel because we're trying to be environmentally friendly. And all of that is drainage and line side. So when you sit on a train and you look out the window, what you're looking at is a line side. That's the bit that I'm accountable for of the entire network rail infrastructure. And what you don't see, hopefully you don't see, is water, because the water is being collected and it's all buried assets and collects till we get to streams and rivers, and that's where the water then goes through. And in that lovely space is where the drainage is taking place. And so, hope you enjoyed that little video. I had fun making it. My role is not to make Lego, but I do like doing it. My role is I write and own the technical standards for drainage and line side. And in those standards, it tells people what they have to do to keep the railway safe and performing, but it also includes absolutely what legally we're required to do. So we can't pollute the water, for example. So we talk about what we're supposed to do when water comes onto the railway to make sure it's not polluted when it gets to the rivers. So things like that, for example. I sponsor R&D projects, so research and development projects. These are projects that are with the universities, and these are projects that are with suppliers and manufacturers who have come up with new material, new ways of working. And we think, I wonder if we can use them on the railway. So I sponsor them, and then we work on trialing them and testing them out. I identify the competency, the skills, the knowledge, and the skills that are required, and then create training programs to support those skills for people who work in my area. I look at future ambitions and aspirations and make sure that we keep up with the changes that are happening either in technology or even in socially what's happening in that space. So, for example, we think about plastic. We want to reduce plastic. So when we started looking at our products, we said, are we wasting plastic or are we using more recycled plastic? And if you look on the railway, when you're on the train or next at a station, you might see some blue catch pit lids. That's recycled plastic that's recently been brought in. And those have holes in them so the water can get through, but that our inspectors can look through and see that the water's flowing through. That sort of stuff is where we're always looking forward. What's different? What's coming? What's changing? We're always looking to improve and learn from lessons. We get things wrong. We get flooding and we think, oh, that didn't quite work the way we wanted it to. So it's always about learning and improving how to be better. I also have the challenge of not just looking at today's problems, but looking further out, this is quite exciting. So it's great to fix a problem you got today, but try to imagine a future 20, 30 years from now. What should we be doing then? What should the railway look like then? And if we start thinking of that now, we could start creating technologies and ways of working to get us to that future vision of the railway. And that's really exciting because in 20, 30 years' time, you might be working for Network Rail, or you might be an engineer working in this space, and you'll be thinking, yeah, this was an idea we thought about way back when, and now it's real. So that's kind of cool. And the other thing is that what's really exciting about where I work is there's the diversity in my team. So drainage and line side isn't made up of just engineers. I do have engineers in my team. I'm one, and I've got a few others. I've got hydrologists in my team. Those are people who study water. Hydrology is the study of water. So they talk about understanding how water soaks into the ground and how it flows. To me, that's really cool. I've got foresters. I've got a chartered forester in my team who explains to me how trees behave. I never knew that. And how trees respond to too much water, not enough water, the recent heat waves, and what that means to leaves falling on the ground. Don't laugh, leaves falling on the ground and falling on the railway is a problem because they're slippery. And that creates a problem with friction. So we need to understand how the trees behave, how they grow, so that we can manage them, but also look after them too. I've got asset managers. They look after what we call life cycle. When you have an idea to when you want to pull something down, they manage that process to design, construction, inspection, maintenance, the whole flow, and how data is used. And so therefore I've got data analysts. We've got a lot of information, but what do you do with it? What's it telling us? What's the trends and the patterns? And so that's where data analysts come in. And so while engineering is great, because I'm one and I would say that, I have a lot of people in STEM and science and math and environment working with us to make sure that we do all of this together and we do it well. Okay, so a little bit about myself. I've got a master's degree in civil engineering. Didn't always want to be a civil engineer. When I was 8, I wanted to be an archaeologist. I was going to discover the next pyramid. Yeah, after being 8, I thought, no, it's going to be outside and dirty all the time. So I then turned to software engineering. I grew up in California, so I was around IT, Facebook, Google. They were all around us. And so it made sense. I'd be a software engineer. And then I thought, I don't want to sit in front of a computer all the day. I want to build stuff. So I wanted to then go into robotics. So I went to university thinking I was going to robotics. And at the same time I went to university, I started as an intern on the railway. That's like an apprentice on the railway, and I fell in love with the railway. And after that, I thought, this is so cool. I'm going to change to civil engineering. And I changed to civil engineering while I was at university, and I never looked back. I love math, chemistry, and physics. Really thought they were cool, loved doing experiments, loved finding answers to problems. I like figuring out why things work, how they work, and I like to figure out how do we do it better? How do we do it differently but better? I also really, really enjoy reading. I gobbled up books for science fiction and fantasy, loved reading. And that's where a lot of creativity and new ideas came from. I'm still learning. I'm still learning all the time. I mentioned learning about trees from people on my team, about new technologies. I'll talk about hyperspectral in a second. I've just learned about this. So cool. New ways of working, how to be a better communicator, how to write better reports, how to present better. So I'm always looking at improving as I continue to work as well. And while Network Rail is an engineering organization and it does have lots of engineers in it, people are the most important part of the railway, of actually of anything that we do. Without people, things don't happen. And so our passengers, the public, and our workforce are always on my mind when we think about engineering solutions and how we do things, because ultimately people have to do the work, people ride the railway, people live next to the railway. And in my space, they're really, really important and key. So on my last slide, I want to talk a little bit about some cool stuff that we're doing, and then I'm going to give you guys some challenges of how you can help. We're looking at some new technology called hyperspectral technology, which is flown over on the air, and it collects images. It collects thermal images of the vegetation of the trees. And based on the heat signature of those trees, we can identify if the tree is dead, dying, or diseased. I think that's super cool. And remember, we got 22,000 kilometers of railway, 44,000 on both sides. And we're like, where are the trees going to fall down? Because they're dead. This technology lets us identify those trees, specifically geospatial, so we know exactly which tree is dead, and we can then remove it before it falls in front of a train, which is not what we want. We're looking at new materials for our boundaries and our fences and our steps and the walkways. We want to move away from concrete and steel because they have a really large carbon footprint. So we want to move towards more recycled materials, plastics, more natural material, wood, but wood falls apart quite quickly in wet climate. So what's the new kind of materials we're looking for? So we're working with suppliers, manufacturers in the fencing industry to say, what's new? What can we use that will last a long time, doesn't need maintenance, and it works for the people who use it? And then in the space of water, we're mapping out what we call our catchments. So catchments is the land around the railway where when the rain falls, that water flows towards the railway. We call it the marble test. So imagine a marble on the top of a mountain, that's your drop of water, and it will flow through until it eventually reaches the sea. That's the water cycle. But if the railway's in the middle of it, that water's coming towards us. So where are we getting a lot of water? And where are we getting a lot of water that's coming at us fast, especially with climate change? So we need to identify that. And where the red areas are, that's where we get a lot of water real quick. And where the green areas are on the lower image, that's where the water naturally is fine. We don't have a problem. And that using that image, we using that information, we make sure that the drainage is working well. So where do I need your help? I need your help tackling climate change. Right, climate change is now. It's not coming, it's now. We're having heat waves, we're having extreme and adverse weather, we're having a lot of rain really quickly in a short amount of time, and then it moves away. How the heck do we manage that? And how do we make sure that we're resilient, that we can work and create a safe performing railway in that environment? I need your help with biodiversity. By 2024, that's in a year and a half's time, we cannot reduce the number of biodiversity in an area where we're doing projects. So that means if we're doing construction, we have to make up for the loss by putting biodiversity somewhere else, replanting, putting bug hotels, putting up bat boxes, etc. But going forward, we're going to have a challenge that we have to increase the biodiversity. So how do you do that? How do you encourage more things to live in a railway environment while you're still running a railway? And habitat management is linked to that as well. And that's where you have woodland, grassland, wetland, but then we build on that area. How do you make sure that you create the natural habitat? So flora and fauna, that means the vegetation, the flowers, and of course the biodiversity continues to live and have a connected system where they survive as well. So we need a national railway that's safe and reliable, but supports environmental needs. Just a little question there to ask yourselves to help me into the future. So thank you very much.
I can see we have one question in so far. But before we get to that, I have a question for you, Mona.
Sure.
What do you love about your job?
I love making things better. I am floating when we make things better. That sounds really silly, doesn't it? There's a lot of issues and questions and challenges and concerns. And when somebody turns around to me and says, "Oh, Mona, thank you for that technology. That's made my life so much easier, or my job so much easier, or now I understand where I need to focus and do work." I'm floating on air when we do that. And then we do that through different materials. We do that through fixing ways of working, through technology, or through even training and competency, giving people the tools themselves to do the job well. So that's what I really, really love.
Making people's life better. That's a good answer.
Yeah.
We've got a question in there from Andrew. Now, this is a little bit about what you touched upon, Mona. It's how is climate change impacting your role? And how do you expect it to impact in the future? So we know a little bit about what you have to do with the biodiversity to ensure it eventually gets more and more and better. But what else are you seeing these effects?
Yeah. Oh, goodness me. We're seeing a lot of impact today with climate change. So, for example, the recent heat wave that we've had, remember, we've got millions of trees on the railway. That heat wave has impacted certain species of trees where they started to drop their leaves sooner than in autumn. And they it's because of stress, not having enough water. Now, when we have leaf fall on the railway, it is a serious problem. I know it's a joke in the news and so forth about leaves on the rails stopping trains. The reason the problem is there is that these leaves fall onto the rail, create friction problems, that the wheels don't spin properly on the trains, and so they're not getting traction because of the friction. So we've witnessed what we call a false autumn earlier than we expected, and we don't know how the trees are going to respond when autumn properly hits and goes through. So we're sort of waiting and watching and seeing what trends are going to happen in that space. From a water perspective, the extreme and adverse weather events because of climate change means that we've had some real crazy storms in summertime. We're used to, oh, it's becoming autumn. It's normally wet. It's going to have, we're going to have rain in October, November, and December. It's wet.
Yeah.
But when there's storms in July and August, the workforce and people who are used to a seasonal pattern were like, whoa, we were caught a bit surprised. And so what that means is that you have to manage drainage throughout the year. Let me give an example of your own homes or where you live. You might have guttering around your home. You probably only start thinking about your guttering when it starts to rain. Think, oh, I really probably should clear those leaves out of there, right? But you need to do those in summertime as well so that you're ready for when it rains. But if rain can come at any time at a massive intensity, that changes the way you work. And so that's a challenge that we've got because we don't have more people doing the work. They just have to work differently. And that's today's problem.
Wow. Yeah, so it's a big challenge, but it sounds like you're all working towards it.
We are.
We've got a question in here from Rachel, and Rachel asks, what is the most exciting thing about how rail might look in 30 years?
Ooh, I love it. Do you know what? So I think that rail is going to have a massive transformation. If we think about it, you drive your car if you have a car, is parked 80% of the time. That's pretty sad. We pay a lot of money for a car that's just parked 80% of the time. People drive to the train station, park the car, and then they get on the train. So imagine this. Imagine that the railway starts to work better with the road network, and we start to have a transportation system that allows you to say, use an app and have a automatic driven autonomous car come pick you up from your home because it knows what time your train is going to go. It takes you to the train station, and then you just jump out. You don't even need a car. And you use an app to get this automated car that comes. And it's clever enough to go, oh dear, the train's delayed by 10 minutes. Let me just send you a little message at home. So you stay in your nice warm home for those extra 10 minutes instead of at the station platform with a delayed train, because hopefully our trains won't be delayed, but things happen. Let's blame the signaling system, right? So these automated cars. Now, could you imagine? We won't need car parks. We don't need multi-story car parks. We don't need that land to park cars on. The future could be quite exciting to have automated cars linked to train service. And so it's all very cool in that space. I did tell you I like science fiction, Logan's Run, why not?
Yeah, that is quite science future. I like that.
But we gotta demand stuff like that. Otherwise, again, with the climate change, we gotta make some really cool, crazy ideas come to life.
Yeah. I do have one. You touched a little bit on the projects you're currently working on as well, about how you can use things like drones to identify about the trees and how healthy they are. What was the first project you worked on when you started out in working in rail versus what you're doing now?
Oh my gosh. So when I first joined Railtrack, which was what Network Rail was called before, I went on track renewals. So I was working in track renewals, and I was working on the West Coast Route Mod, which is the London to Glasgow line. And we were working at the time when the new trains came in, the new Virgin trains were coming in to run at 125 miles an hour. Before, the trains could only run at 100 miles an hour. And the challenge was we want to run them at 125. Now, if you think about engineering in that space, you might think, well, what's the big deal? Why don't you just run them faster? No, you have to think about the forces of the train and something going faster. So we had to tilt the track so that when the train went around the corner, think about roller coasters, right? What we call the tilts, right? That you have to have that because that's a force of going forward, but you're turning. And there's a heavy train going faster, so lots of forces. So we had to re-look at the entire track system, track support system, the tilt of the track. If you tilt the track, guess what you have to do with the electrification? You got to tilt it too, because you've got tilting trains. And you'll see some of that come through. And it was quite exciting for us to be able to do that. And that's what I was first doing. I was out walking from Watford to Shrubbergh, out on track on weekends, looking at track construction and excavation, making sure that they were doing right.
Wow, I'm only going to be able to think of trains as roller coasters now.
Yeah,
You put that image in my head.
Maybe that's the future of the railway. Yeah.
We've got time, I think, for 2 more questions, and I've got one here. After working in the industry for so long, what continues to inspire you about engineering?
Because engineering's, well, like I said, it's always about fixing problems, right? So trust me, the problems haven't finished ending. We still find more problems. There's always room for improvement, always. That's why science and engineering are so great, because you don't stop. Oh, we've built the bicycle, so now we don't need to have transport anymore. No, we want to go faster. We want to do more. You're always looking to improve, always looking to do that. My poor team, I tell you, I'm like, ooh, how about we do this? How about we do that? Ooh, and can we do this? And look what they're doing over there. Can't we do that too? And sometimes I have to stop and go, where we go? We got a lot to do now. Let's just finish the work we got to do first and then start looking for the new things. There's always room for improvement. And as an engineer, that's why I love making things better. So there's constantly stuff going on. And new technology. We talked about drones. There's robots. I mean, we're looking at robot technology to help us cut trees and look at the vegetation. Robot technologies to go into the pipes and clear any sort of blocks in there as well. So there's all sorts of cool stuff that are coming around the corner that we never thought about before. And how do we bring it into the railway? So yeah, that's what keeps me excited.
It does sound quite exciting. Okay, we're going to finish on this one last question, and it's from Stephanie. And Stephanie asks, what's your best train pun? Any train jokes?
Oh, so many. Do you know what? I had a conference last week and we had pardon the pun joke. So some of the silly ones. So drainage and lineside on the railways refer to as off track. And sometimes we go, oh, I'm just going to go a little bit off track. Right. Another one is, oh, I've got lots of projects. They're all in the pipeline. Right. And then on the tree side, it's like, what's the root cause of the problem? Sorry, I'm really cheesy. I can go on and on. I will stop at those 3.
Oh, well, that's so far been my favourite part of the interview. I love silly jokes like that. So, Mona, I just want to say thank you very much, and thank you everyone for watching.
My pleasure.
It's your turn, everyone out there, to come up with your own engineering ideas. Remember, and send them to us once you've finished so we can get your certificate sent out and hopefully see you in person at our public exhibitions in May. So thank you, everybody. And remember, if you were an engineer, what would you do?